I'm 31 now, and I've grown up in many ways, and you have to be more politically aware in a day and age like this. It's almost impossible to close your eyes to it.
It was a time of considerable fracturing.
And you're reading the newspapers that the war's over, but the war's not over.
You have to understand where the Mike Douglas Show sat in culture.
Here is John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
It was the most popular show in daytime television.
When President Nixon leaves for Peking on Thursday,
Yoko said, we're doing this show on Mike Douglas. We're having Bobby Seale and Jerry Rubin, and I'm going like, what?
Here is Ralph Nader. Is he running for president? No.
John Lennon and Yoko Ono didn't want us to talk about their music. That spoke for itself.
What would you like to talk about this week, John?
Love, peace, communication,
drugs.
Drugs, anything.
When I got to the studio, I got a glimpse of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I said, oh my goodness, this is exciting.
They did have an agenda, and the agenda had to do with making the world better.
Yeah, it was something they were trying to get away with.
Well, young people are known to be cynical, and I say to them, nobody's smart enough to be a pessimist.
Imagine there's no heaven. People tend to think that somebody will save them, and there's only people can save us, only us all deciding to do something about anything, whatever it is. Just even making that decision that I want to do something is a start. Imagine all the people living for today.
Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your pharaoh of physical media, Robert Meyer Burnett, with a very special episode of Let's Get Physical Media. Shout out to KINO LORBER and Matt at KINO LORBER and Shout Studios for providing us an interview with director Erik Nelson. Now, I didn't know, they sent me this disc and I watched this. This is a fascinating tale of a week in television history that, as somebody who's as media savvy as I am, I was surprised that I really didn't know much about this time and what happened on Mike Douglas Show for a week. But we have Erik Nelson here, the director, to tell us. So put your hands together for director Erik Nelson to talk about his amazing documentary that is now currently available on physical media, both on DVD and Blu-ray. Thanks to KINO LORBER. Erik, it is great to have you here on Let's Get Physical Media.
Well, greetings, cats and kittens, foxes and coyotes. I'm very happy to join you. I'm trying to maintain your same energy level.
Well, I just do that for the beginning. Listen,
let's do the whole interview like that. We can compress a half hour into 10 minutes. What do you say?
Well, we could do that. I mean, I have to say that I was really, first of all, this film is wildly entertaining. And congratulations for it. And I just, what made you decide to delve into this bit of television history? And I can only imagine, was it difficult to get all the rights to use all the footage?
A lot of questions. The first question is, the material and the shows were hiding in plain sight. I knew they happened. I knew they happened at the time. 16-year-old me didn't watch them because I wasn't a big fan of Mike Douglas and, believe it or not, the Beatles at that time.
What?
But I knew they happened. And I knew in the late 90s that they put them out as a box set. They were on VHS. Remember VHS?
Oh,
so
yes.
I knew the shows existed. And, you know, with 60s, 70s television, you never know if things have been preserved. And I just felt there was a film there. And I felt, especially in the moment in America's 2024, a film that got into this would be appropriate, and what those shows were about in 1972 resonated in 2024. So a couple of years ago, we started the process of putting it together, getting the rights. I'd done a film with Yoko Ono, U.S. versus John Lennon, and Sean was involved. So I knew that what their aesthetics were and that they were workable. You would be able to work with them. Yoko was very helpful in the first film, as was Sean. So I wasn't nervous about doing it. You know, I knew that there was something there and that we could potentially get this thing done.
Well, I mean, Daytime Revolution, first of all, great title. But I was curious, you know, from a production standpoint and having worked on films myself, getting the music rights and there's so many interesting people that are in the documentary, historical figures, and did it take a long time for you to get all the rights in place where you could use everything and use the music? And I know you had a lot of the people that are in the footage in the movie.
It took time, but wasn't difficult. It took time, but it wasn't difficult. When we got Yoko's blessings to make the film, that made it a lot easier to access their music and even the Beatles' music. And the people who were on set, who we interviewed, Ralph Nader, Nobuko Miyamoto, David Rosenboom, Hillary Rosen, Gary Schwartz, were very happy to do the film, and so that their appearances were cleared. And CBS Media Ventures, our partners, owned the Mike Douglas footage. And Ernie DeMassa, who's also in the film, is the executor of the Mike Douglas estate. So it was all under one roof, and everybody wanted to see the movie made, and everybody used good faith and good intentions to get the film done. Not unlike what happened in February of 1972, when Mike Douglas's team reached out to John and Yoko, or John and Yoko reached out to Mike Douglas's team. No one's quite sure how that happened, but everybody operated in good faith and good intentions.
Yeah, I mean, it's really spectacular. I mean, you know, now you had said that they had released all of the footage previously on VHS, so which. Obviously, yours is a documentary, but it's great to go back and to see all that. It made me want to go back and get all of it and watch just everything again. And
it's a slog. You think it would be interesting, but each show is 90 minutes long.
Right.
And there were 5 of them, and so 7.5 hours. And we definitely got the good stuff. There's not a lot that wasn't good that we didn't put in the film.
Well, that's good to know. And now I feel better. So, well, let me ask you this. How do you approach, when you're starting a documentary like this, where do you begin? Do you begin with obviously procuring the footage, but is it with research? Do you create some kind of an outline and then work off of that and then start editing? What is your process?
All of the above. I had an idea for how I wanted, what the guardrails were on the film. I didn't want to have anyone who wasn't on the set be in the film today. I wanted to put that. I didn't want, as good as Summer of Soul was, I didn't need, which I felt this film had some DNA shared with.
Sure.
I didn't want to have people who weren't there commenting and telling us how important it was. I wanted the shows to speak for themselves.
Right.
The second filter was, I wanted it not to be about the thing, I wanted it to be the thing. I wanted to have the people watching the film feel like they watched the show in almost real time, even though each show was a separate show with different wardrobe, et cetera, et cetera. And then because I focused on the people who were there, that meant by necessity that we would use their appearances. So that made it simpler. Plus, no documentary should ever, ever, ever be over 2 hours, and the ideal length of a documentary is 1.5 hours. This one came in at about 1 hour and 48 minutes, so I'm 18 minutes over my limit, but that meant that we had to make some editorial decisions.
Sure.
So I knew going in kind of what, Stanley Kubrick has a great quote. He says, I don't always know what I want to do, but I always know what I don't want to do.
Right.
So I knew what I didn't want to do going in, and after I spoke with Sean about the feel of it and what my intentions were and got his blessings, we just went into the edit room and got it done.
How long was the entire process from the time that you? Well, what gave you the idea? Was it really just seeing?
I just thought there'd be a movie in there.
Right.
I've done my films. A lot of my movies, my feature documentaries, revolve around archive. Starting with Grizzly Man in 2005.
Sure.
I did a film called The Cold Blue, which repurposed William Wyler's Memphis Belle raw footage. A film called Apocalypse 45. A film called The Gray State, which, in essence, a man who goes psychotic and kills himself and his family, but also videotaped everything about the family the years prior. So that film revolved around archive. So this is certainly a much lighter topic than World War II, a psychotic murderer. And that's maybe another reason why I went in that direction, was it was a more optimistic use of it.
Now, when you begin the process of making a documentary film, how long did you expect this whole process to take? Did you give yourself a year, 18 months?
Well, the timeline is we reached out to Yoko in the summer of 2021, and she gave us a year. Team Yoko gave us a year to try to get something going. The following year, after a year, nothing was going, so I made the decision to finance the film myself. So I committed to make the movie in the summer of 2022, and finished up a cut by the fall of 2022.
Wow.
And then spent all of 2023 off and on tinkering with it. And we finished it off earlier this year, and got KINO on board in March, and then planned, as we kind of always planned, to have it released before the election. Because my opinion was, and still remains, I knew this was going to be a cathartic election, and I wanted this film out there prior and afterwards. And I'm glad it's out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can't recommend it highly enough. I mean, thanks to Matt at KINO for sending me a copy. We have a lot of, I've often thought there's a lot of material in the archives of this various studios, the various TV stations, and this seems like a perfect use of distilling something like this down for future generations to see. And as I told you, I was 5 years old when this happened, so I wasn't, I was going to kindergarten. I wouldn't have known to watch it. But to have it now, I think it's a vital historical account. And does it make you want to delve into? When I watched this, I couldn't help but think how much other gold that we don't have access to or people don't know about is just waiting to be rediscovered.
Well, or repurposed. It's out there. It's like looking, it's spelunking. I'm in the middle of bringing back Cave of Forgotten Dreams right now, so I'm very much on spelunking in caves. It's on my brain. So you look for stuff, and it doesn't always have to be archive, but archive can drive things. And my specialty is restoring archive. So if you look at if you find a copy of the VHS, or you find a clip of these shows on YouTube, and you look at what we did to restore it, there was a tremendous and a very costly amount of work to make this material look sharp and clean and remove all the video hits, because it wasn't copied properly. They copied it, thank God, but they didn't really copy it the way they should. It was on 2-inch videotape, a lot of dropouts. These things deteriorate after 50 years.
Right, sure.
So what we did was we got it, and we spent, once we just knew what we were going to use, the 70 minutes or so, 1/10 of the material that was there, we then concentrated on making it look as good as we could, which was tremendously time-consuming.
How did you? I mean, there's a lot of talk now. We're getting 4K versions of films that are AI assisted, and I'm a big proponent of going back to negative whenever you can and transferring negative. What was the process that you went on, and take us through how you restored the footage?
We didn't use AI, but what we did though is Ernest Savage and Paul Marengo, the restoration team, just went through and sharpened everything up, removed scratches, color corrected everything. We had color photographs that were taken on the set, so we knew what the color of everything should be. we brought it to widescreen in a very subtle Wizard of Oz moment. It starts in 3x4, but we then go to widescreen when we were able to, because the first part of the first show, of course, had degraded and required the most restoration.
Sure.
So it just didn't look great.
Yeah, and was that process weeks? Was it months?
Years.
Oh my God. Wow. And your
place across a year. It wasn't a year of solid work.
Did you have to do any research? Did you have to try different things before you settled on the best process?
No, we with the Cold Blue, which was brought up amazingly, our team has worked. We've worked together on projects, and we are always updating our software, and we have our aesthetic, and we know we could have made this look even better. We just ran out of time and money. But at a certain point, my films are never released; they're abandoned.
Right.
So at a certain point, I just had to get the thing out.
Well, it's so great. Was during the editorial process, it seems like it was pretty straightforward. You knew what you wanted, you made it happen. Was there anything, did you have to cut things out that like you said, I like the idea of having a 90 minutes, 2-hour documentary. Did you have to kill any darlings? Were there things that aren't in the film? No,
not really. No, there wasn't. There were things that in a different movie would have worked. I would have liked to have shown Johnny Be Good, which was the other number that John did with Chuck Berry, but 2 songs were one too many.
Right.
And I wanted to keep a balance and not have things drag. There was a lot of structure in this. At this point, when it's done, it just sort of seems it just flows right along and chugs right along. But to get that to chug properly took, again, a lot of time and effort just to have it flow properly. And there were only 2 cameras in the studio, so we couldn't go to cutaways. There were hardly any shots of the audience, so we had to pull things up and remove pieces, but make it flow properly without getting invasive. So something that's in the film when you watch it again, because I'm hoping you didn't see it the first time, we came up with what I called the Bippy wipe, where we used a flower, one of the Mike Douglas-like flowers that wiped and did pull-ups, which we had to do a few times and we just couldn't cut around it. But it was very unobtrusive and not calling attention to itself. I'm a believer that it's a corollary of what Charlie Chaplin said about comedy. If what you're doing is funny, you don't have to be funny doing it. And what I believe is if what you're doing is important, you don't have to be self-important to do it. So I was very careful to kind of make the film seem very minimalist, not get in the way of it as a director, just have it seem kind of like it just sort of gets up and goes on its own steam.
Yeah, it really does. It was a lot of fun to watch. Now, it's interesting to me that we had Peter Jackson's documentary where we got to see some incredible footage that a lot of it hadn't been seen before. You've got now Martin Scorsese's documentary out. We've got this coming out, which focuses on John Lennon and Yoko Ono. It seems to me like the Beatles maybe they've never left the zeitgeist. I mean, I grew up as a Beatles fan, but it seems like right now there is a resurgence in interest in the Beatles and their legacy. What does John and Yoko have to tell us today? I mean, is America...
Interestingly, in our opinion, it isn't what John and Yoko have to tell us. It's what the holy trinity of John, Yoko, and Mike Douglas have to tell us.
Yes.
Mike Douglas is the 3rd superstar. And what happened on the set was Mike Douglas, who was basically who ran America's Living Room at 4:30, reaching 40 million people a day and the most popular talk show, happily invited conceptual artist and general crazy Yoko Ono and John Lennon into America's Living Room for a week and handed the keys over to them and trusted that they wouldn't spill wine on the carpet, metaphorically or literally. And what happened was everybody got along. They introduced Jerry Rubin, Bobby Seale, biofeedback controlling synthesizers, organic food, all of these crazy things at the time into the culture. And Mike Douglas accommodated it and facilitated it and was very open-minded. That's what I find unique then, and that's what I find unique now. And try to imagine this happening today.
Oh, that was the thing. I couldn't. And
if Joe Rogan handed the keys of his podcast to Taylor Swift for a week and said, you can do anything you want, and if you have a political agenda, anybody you bring on, I'm open, and he was accommodating and open-minded, it would be half as powerful as these shows were, but it might somewhat replicate what happened at this point.
Right.
Joe Rogan is no Mike Douglas, and Taylor Swift is no John and Yoko, as much as we love Taylor Swift. So and that's when you ask, if you haven't asked, you will, why would I make this movie? It was to celebrate the fact that this happened. And the second question is, why now? I think I've told you why now.
Yeah.
To demonstrate a time when Americans, if they didn't agree on something, they were at least open-minded to it, and they could treat each other with civility. I think in this time, it's a message that is never going to get old.
No, I totally agree. And I think that really comes through in the movie itself. And it is just a lot of fun to watch. You can't not have a smile on your face watching this movie, because I don't think you're beating anyone over the head with your messaging. It's there, but it's also, it works on so many different levels. And I was wildly entertained. I had to show it to, I watched it once, and then I've watched it twice because I showed it to my girlfriend as well. I'm like, you got to watch this. And I think that it works on many different levels. It's from a historical standpoint, like you said, we have a lot to learn. And it made me wonder, why can't we have this kind of thing going on all the time now? I think
we can, but we have to have it in various smaller. You're never going to have a show that has that 40 million people and 6 television channels and a major newspaper in every city that was printed on newsprint and was obsolete the next day.
Right.
That ecosystem of communication is gone. But being Mike Douglas, being open-minded and gracious and civil to your fellow man, that's something we can hope for.
Absolutely. Well, has this film gone on the festival circuit? Did it play around the world?
It did not. It came out theatrically. We weren't. Festivals didn't bite. They didn't. It maybe wasn't provocative enough, or it wasn't. For whatever reason, I was surprised that festivals I had been in. We had Grizzly Man was in Sundance. Gray State was in Tribeca. Cold Blue was in AFI. All 3 of those festivals. TIFF, Cave of Forgotten Dreams, was in that. All those festivals weren't interested. So it didn't really, it certainly wasn't the shot in the arm that you want to have, but I believed in the film, and KINO LORBER believes in the film, and talking to you, and when you say that you had to show it to your girlfriend, that's better than any festival, quite honestly.
Well, it's just so much fun. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, I've been making independent films myself. How do you feel about the state of indie cinema? The festival circuit has changed so much since I first started doing it 25 years ago. And like you said, where's the legacy appreciation to those filmmakers who have already made their name at festivals? You'd think that you'd get grandfathered in as a legacy filmmaker, that they would want to see what you're up to now.
Well, but if I'm grandfathered in, that means an up-and-coming filmmaker may not get the shot. So I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining about the ecosystem of festivals. I only point out we didn't get into them.
Sure.
And art will find its way. It's disappointing that I had to make the film and finance it out of my own pocket. It would have been nice if we could have sold it in advance to somebody, but that's my decision.
Sure.
I felt it was important to get out there, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that slowly over the next couple years, I'll make my money back.
Do you think that, documentaries, I'm watching more documentaries than ever before on all the various streaming services, and I find myself more drawn towards documentaries than a lot of the other material that is out there, a lot of the narrative stuff, because frankly, it's not as interesting as a lot of the documentaries that are being made. How do you feel about the state of documentary filmmaking here in 2024, soon to be 2025?
Art will find its way. People with a passion and a story to tell, and the tools, which are more accessible than ever. You can film on your iPhone. Parts of the Cold Blue were filmed on my iPhone. A big chunk of Apocalypse 45, all the interviews at the end were filmed on my iPhone. And not even an iPhone 11, not even an iPhone 18.
Wow.
So, the technology is there, and if there's an audience for it, God bless people for chasing their dreams and their vision. So in some ways, I think the best documentary that I've seen in the last 5 years is the 4-hour Disney Hotel Star Wars documentary on YouTube, where an influencer went, checked herself in with her sister, and made, I think, a 5-hour immersive film.
It's amazing.
It's the best film I've seen in 5 years in just about any medium, narrative documentary. And she just went for it. And she has, what, 9 million views now on YouTube?
Yeah.
God bless her.
Yeah, that's well, and absolutely right. And she was a beloved figure in fan circles before she even did that documentary.
Yeah,
and
she's the whole package. A great filmmaker, fantastic on camera, passionate, speaking the truth to corporate America. There's like nothing wrong with that film other than I wish it was a little longer.
Breaking your own rules.
Yeah, well, you know, rules are meant to be broken.
Yeah, it's very compelling. But so is this film, and I would suggest that everyone seek it out. It's called Daytime Revolution. It is available on. Is it available on a streaming service now?
It's out in the world. You can get it physical media. DVD came out on December 10th. Ordered for Christmas. You can watch it Apple TV. I think it's on YouTube. You can get it through YouTube, Amazon Prime. And that's the great thing is, you know, it's there. It's out in the world. Anybody who wants to see it can see it, you know.
Yeah.
And if you click and buy it, the money goes to reimburse me for my hard expenses to make the film, not to put money in my pocket. At this point, I'm just trying to make back the money I spent on it.
Sure.
And so that's my private plea to everybody, you know. But, you know, it's a good ride, and it's meant to be seen. To me, it's a lifeboat now. You can swim out to this lifeboat of these shows in this film, get in the lifeboat, and for a moment at least, kind of forget all of the crazy that's going on around us right now.
And I think there's nothing better than that. The film is Daytime Revolution. Here's the poster for it, one of two. And I highly recommend watching this if you're a Beatles fan, if you're a history fan, if you're a fan of just amazing pop culture moments in time and an amazing time capsule back to a different America than we have today. I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. And Erik, I want to thank you, Erik Nelson, the director of this. I guess you're the producer too. You're everything.
Pretty much. Poster designer, trailer cutter, you know. I'll sell popcorn in the lobby. Just let me know.
And I want to thank KINO LORBER. I want to thank Matt at KINO LORBER and everybody at KINO LORBER for continuing to sponsor this channel. And I don't know how they do it, but they're putting out more stuff that preserves Hollywood history than any other company. From silent movies to documentaries to foreign films. KINO LORBER does it all. So check out their website. They always have great sales as well. So Erik, thanks for being here. And I very much appreciate having you on this special edition of Let's Get Physical Media.
My pleasure.